Jack Turner seized Emily Grace by her locks and hurled her against the floor. At just 22 years old, Emily's stunning appearance had become nothing but a burden. Her mother's new husband was evil through and through. Alcohol and cards had stripped him of everything he once possessed. Before the clock struck 12, men demanding payment had already gathered outside their rundown home. Jack forced Emily into the scorching afternoon sun. Fury and shame burned bright in his bloodshot eyes. "Take care of them," he commanded. Emily's blood turned to ice. The words she'd just heard seemed impossible. This man who'd married her mother was commanding her to surrender herself to these debt collectors. She refused, her voice breaking as she spoke. "No, I won't do it." That rejection ignited something dangerous in Jack. The collectors chuckled darkly. Jack's ego crumbled completely. The bottle in his grip exploded against the wall, glass fragments flying everywhere. He charged at Emily and struck her face with such force that she collapsed onto the rough planks below. As Emily attempted to escape by crawling, Jack's boot connected with her side. She struggled to breathe while the men watched, enjoying her suffering. Jack's alcohol-fueled rage intensified by the moment. "How dare you resist me?" he snarled. He yanked her arm and pulled her from the shack into the blazing yard. Emily's clothing had already ripped during their fight. Angry red marks covered her face and dark bruises painted her arms. She pleaded desperately for compassion, but Jack had abandoned all mercy. The collectors trailed behind, mocking her. Jack pushed Emily toward the water's edge beside the ranch property. The harsh noon sun beat down mercilessly on her fair complexion, making each injury appear even more brutal. Emily wept uncontrollably. Her knees shook violently. Once more she tried begging. "Please, I'm asking you." Jack's jaw clenched tight. Her desperate words only made his humiliation cut deeper. Without warning, he grabbed her around the middle and launched her into the rushing water. The river erupted around her falling form. Emily plunged below the surface as frigid water flooded her airways. She reached frantically upward, fighting for survival. The powerful flow pushed her deeper. Her damaged dress tangled around her body like restraints. Though she battled fiercely, her energy was rapidly disappearing. The men's voices became distant murmurs beneath the water. Her pulse raced wildly. Everything grew hazy. Could this truly be her final moment? Would she perish as nothing more than this cruel stepfather's casualty? Right when complete darkness threatened to consume her, a figure emerged along the water's edge. A stallion whinnied. Heavy footsteps struck the earth. Someone was racing toward the river without pause. He dove straight in and caught her arm. Emily's form had gone slack, yet her eyes still held that precious spark of determination to survive. The stranger brought her to safety, placing her carefully on the riverbank grass. Her lungs worked desperately as she expelled the water. Wounds and cuts marked her skin everywhere, and her mouth quivered as though she wished to speak but possessed no remaining words. The man stared down at her in complete disbelief. This was Thomas Carter, a cattle rancher approaching 60. His eyes grew wide, witnessing the complete nightmare written across Emily's delicate body. What sort of beast would inflict this upon his own stepdaughter? And what destiny lay ahead now that her stepfather and his creditors remained lurking close by? Could Thomas shield her from the tempest that had only begun to rage? Emily choked and wheezed as Thomas scooped her up. Her frame shivered from the icy river water. Her destroyed dress stuck to her flesh. He didn't hesitate for an instant. He set her on his mount and galloped swiftly to his property. The aging timber home appeared ahead. Thomas brought her indoors and positioned her tenderly on a bed beside the hearth. He covered her with a heavy quilt, but noticed her continued shaking. Fever consumed her body. Her lips moved as if attempting speech, yet silence remained. Thomas frowned with deep concern. He retrieved a garment from his storage. It was among his older work clothes, worn but spotless. He offered it to her. "This suits you better than me." Emily paused, but eventually put on the shirt. The fit was enormous. The arms engulfed her hands, but for the first time in countless years, she experienced a tiny measure of security. She drew the material tightly around herself. The fireplace's crackling sounds filled the quiet space. Thomas positioned himself near her, patient. Emily gazed at the dancing flames with hollow stare. Then moisture began flowing down her face. She started speaking softly. This wasn't his first attack. Her tone wavered, but she continued. "Year after year he struck me. Year after year I wished he would cease." Thomas made fists but remained silent. Emily dried her eyes using his shirt sleeve, and this morning he demanded I satisfy his creditors. She paused and met Thomas's gaze shamefully. I refused. I resisted. That's when his beating became more vicious than before. Then he discarded me in that river like garbage. Her confession lingered heavily between them. Thomas felt his muscles tense. The thought of her stepfather subjecting her to such horror made him sick. But Emily wasn't done. Sometimes I believed I earned it. Perhaps I was jinxed. Perhaps my existence meant nothing. Her voice cracked once more. But when you rescued me, I sensed that maybe the Lord hadn't abandoned me. Thomas moved closer. His calloused palm rested softly on hers. You earned none of that suffering. Not any of it. The gentleness in his words made her weep even more intensely. For the first time, she permitted herself to trust she wasn't isolated. But beyond the ranch, life continued moving. And creatures like Jack Turner possessed long memories. So what might occur when he returned to reclaim her once again? Morning light appeared over the property. Emily sat beside the glass, clothed in Thomas's garment, watching the pastures. For the first time in ages, she experienced protection, but that safety remained delicate, like crystal ready to break instantly. Thomas delivered a mug of hot tea. She expressed gratitude with a gentle smile, but storm still clouded her gaze. Then hoofbeats shattered the tranquility. A menacing silhouette materialized at the entrance, Jack Turner. He guided his exhausted mare directly to the courtyard and dismounted with the arrogance of someone who believed he controlled everything. "Where is she?" he demanded. Emily went rigid, color draining from her cheeks. Thomas emerged from the entrance, standing firm and unwavering. "She no longer belongs to you." Jack released a harsh laugh that reeked of liquor from yards away. "You imagine you can steal her from me? She's my property. She'll always remain mine." Emily shook her head from within the house. "No, never again." Her voice shook, but determination strengthened it too. Thomas folded his arms. "You'd better leave before my patience runs out." Briefly, Jack appeared ready to attack. But even through his drunken haze, he recognized Thomas wasn't someone to challenge carelessly. He spit into the dust, muttered curses, and remounted his horse. As he departed, Thomas faced Emily. "This isn't finished. He'll return. And more troubling, he'll bring companions." Emily's fingers clutched the shirt sleeves more tightly. "What options do we have?" Thomas considered carefully. Then he declared, "One person can assist us. Sheriff Hawkins." That afternoon, Thomas prepared his horse and traveled to town. The sheriff was a seasoned man with penetrating eyes. Someone who'd witnessed the frontier's worst, yet maintained his integrity. Thomas explained everything about the violence, the deaths, how Emily nearly died in that river. The sheriff listened intently, then agreed. "I'll place her under my protection. If Jack Turner appears again, he'll face legal consequences." Thomas rode back to the ranch carrying some optimism, but he understood one truth. Men like Jack never surrendered easily. They always returned, and when they did, there would be consequences. Before we enter that storm, let me pause briefly. If Emily's struggle and Thomas's bravery have captured your attention, now's the moment to subscribe so you won't miss their continuing battle. Because what follows will challenge them both in unimaginable ways. Darkness descended over the ranch. Emily sat beside the flames, her fingers wrapped firmly around her tea mug. Thomas moved restlessly across the floor. He knew Jack Turner wouldn't surrender. He'd witnessed that expression in the man's eyes. The look of someone who'd lost everything and craved revenge. Suddenly, galloping horses destroyed the stillness. Hounds howled outside. Emily's mug escaped her grasp and crashed on the ground. Thomas seized his weapon and stepped onto the veranda. Blazing torches illuminated the darkness. A dozen figures stood in the courtyard. Leading them was Jack Turner, wearing his twisted grin. Next to him stood the debt collector, a towering man with a facial scar. Behind them were armed criminals prepared for violence. Jack gestured toward the house. "Deliver her immediately." Thomas planted his feet solidly in the earth. "You won't claim her," the scarred man sneered. "Old-timer, you can't battle all of us." With that, the mob charged forward. Thomas discharged a round skyward. The explosion resonated through the canyon. Momentarily, they froze. But then the crowd advanced. Thomas wielded his rifle like a bat, striking one attacker down. Another rushed him brandishing a blade. They collided violently, fists and feet in the dust. Emily shrieked from the entrance. Two men seized her arms and attempted dragging her away. She battled like a wildcat, clawing and striking, but they slapped her face. Thomas broke loose and dove toward her, but three men leaped on his back. He fought desperately, throwing punches, but their combined weight overwhelmed him. They forced him to the ground. Blood flowed from his forehead. Jack loomed over him, cackling, "You're defeated, Carter." "You should have minded your own business," Emily shouted. "Don't hurt him." She tried reaching Thomas, but was knocked back into the dirt. Jack lifted his boot as if to crush Thomas's chest. The scarred collector grabbed Emily's hair, growling in her face. Everything appeared hopeless. Then distant thunder of additional horses emerged. Voices called through the darkness. "Sheriff Hawkins, lower your weapons." Lanterns swayed as mounted riders encircled the yard. The sheriff sat proudly in his saddle, pistol ready in his grip. His deputies spread out, rifles aimed at Jack's gang. For the first time that evening, Jack's smirk vanished. The situation had reversed. But had the sheriff arrived quickly enough to rescue Emily and Thomas from the final strike? The courtyard became completely silent. Sheriff Hawkins remained upright on his mount, revolver steady, his voice commanding. "Release your weapons immediately." The gang wavered. One deputy fired a warning blast into the sky. That decided it. Blades clattered downward. Firearms were discarded. The men retreated, arms raised. Jack Turner's expression contorted with fury and terror. For years, he'd controlled Emily through fear. Now he was helpless, trapped by justice, and revealed for his true nature. The sheriff signaled his men. "Arrest them." Within moments, Jack and the debt collector were tied with rope, forced onto their mounts, and escorted toward town. The torches disappeared into the distance. Only the gentle fire, crackling, and heavy breathing of Thomas and Emily remained. Thomas rose unsteadily, cleaning blood from his brow. Emily rushed to him, wrapping her arms around his torso. For the first time, she felt secure, not just physically, but spiritually. Tears streamed down her face, but now they were tears of freedom. Thomas embraced her tightly. "It's finished now. He'll never harm you again." She pressed her face against him. In that instant, years of anguish began releasing their grip. The sheriff touched his hat brim. "You both have endured plenty. Sleep peacefully. Justice will handle everything else." Then he rode into the night, leaving the ranch in harmony once more. Dawn arrived gentle and bright the following morning. Emily stood on the porch, still wearing Thomas's old shirt, gazing across the vast fields. The horizon extended endlessly like a promise of renewed life. Thomas joined her, his weathered hand touching hers. Their eyes connected, not as savior and survivor, but as two spirits discovering hope within suffering's ruins. What wisdom do we take from their journey? That even in the deepest darkness, someone can extend their hand to lift us back toward the light. That regardless of how shattered our past, tomorrow can still hold strength and love. So I ask you, what would you do encountering someone like Emily, wounded but still struggling to live? Would you turn away? Or would you become the person who pulls them from the river? If this tale touched you, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss our next shared journey. Because in the frontier and in life itself, the struggles never cease.